Hello, I welcome you to my discussion on the Citizenship Amendment Act. Now, some people who might not agree with this video might label it as anti-national, but trust me, I've made sure by my color scheme that it is as national as possible. I've mentioned all the facts and the sources for the facts too. I hope you enjoy, and I'm sorry for the bad editing. The Citizenship Amendment Act was passed on 11th December 2019. When read with the passport rules, it relates to Hindus, Sikhs, Parsis, Jains, Buddhists, and Christians who fled to India from Bangladesh, Pakistan, or Afghanistan before the 31st of December 2014 on grounds of religious persecution or fear of religious persecution and did not have valid documents. The CAA gives them the benefit of not being considered as illegal migrants. Well, firstly, if these people did not have documents, how would they prove that they are from these countries? And secondly, how does one prove the fear of religious persecution? Well, the answer is simple. It is based on government discretion, as the government in Section 5 of the amendment has also taken the power to frame rules for the manner of granting such citizenship. But let's analyze the rationale of the government for passing the amendment. When we move to Afghanistan, even before the CAA was passed, the minorities under the CAA like Hindus and Sikhs were accorded special status by the Afghanistan government, where they were called back and given special national identity cards indicating that the Afghanistan government does not intend on persecuting them. Originally, Afghanistan was not even mentioned in the passport amendment rules of 2015 and had to be added later on. However, another group of minorities in Afghanistan are the Hazaras. They live in the highland region of Afghanistan and are predominantly Shia Muslims. The Hazaras were not included in the CAA, even though they continue to be persecuted in major numbers till date. So is the CAA actually protecting those who are persecuted? When we move on to Bangladesh, we see a similar situation. Talking of the persecuted minorities, Hindus are the second largest religious affiliation in Bangladesh, having a population of 14 million, which is the third largest in the entire world. They have recognitional legislations like the Hindu Marriage Act of 2012. Another side of such persecuted minorities are the Ahmadiyya Muslims, whose literature has been officially banned by the government. On one hand, we are trying to protect a minority which does not even face direct discrimination, and on the other, we are not protecting the minority which is actually outcasted from the national structure. Now, some people might argue that, Muslims don't kill Muslims, they only attack other religions. Well, let's get to the facts. The Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971 involved major number of Muslims dying. Muslims fought Muslims on the basis of what tongue they spoke. Muslims were also the major victims in that war, so much so that they ended up forming another state. Moving on to Pakistan. Ironically, in Pakistan, the rate at which Hindus are increasing is higher than the rate at which they are increasing in India. As explained by India Today in the link shared, the figures used by our Honorable Home Minister on population was a result of misinterpretation of statistics and a little bit of fiction. Reportedly, the Hindu minority group in Pakistan has also officially rejected the CAA. The Ahmadiyya Muslims, on the other hand, are not even considered to be minorities for the purposes of the constitution or census of Pakistan. Well, people may defend the classification saying it is based on a Muslim majority population and state religion, but this fails to explain why Jews, which are both minorities in these states and are also persecuted, not included in the CAA. What purpose is the CAA seeking to achieve if it isn't providing refuge to those who actually need it the most in these very countries? Well, some people might also question, where will these migrants go? Well, now that the issue is communalized to this extent, and if the act can exclude you on the basis of having a religious majority or a state religion, then applying the same logic, other communities might have some options. For Buddhism, India is on the 9th place of the top 10 countries with largest Buddhist population. In fact, countries like both Bhutan, Cambodia, Sri Lanka and Myanmar have even declared Buddhism to be their state religion. So Buddhists indeed have an option except India. For Christians, India is not even on the top 10 list, but there is an exception for Hindus, as India takes in the major Hindu population of the world, but in Asia itself there are 5 other states except Pakistan and Bangladesh who have the largest Hindu majorities in their populations. And here is a fun fact for those who say that no one will take them and they are only ours. The only Hindu Rashtra to have existed in modern times is Nepal, not India. Nepal in its constitution strives to protect the Sanatan Dharam, so Hindus do have a place to go where cows are worshipped and are finally declared the national animal. India in the current economic paradigm is not even able to cater to its current nationals, let alone migrants. What startles me more in this propaganda is that if we have to protect, why not protect the Kashmiri Pandits who were persecuted, who were also the minority and may also have lost their documents while fleeing from Kashmir? When we're not even able to safeguard those who were persecuted in the nation itself, how do we protect these migrants? How does the CAA affect those people who are protesting, since it only discriminates against Muslims. Well, Muslims too are a part of this nation, and any law affecting them would affect the nation. But to be more realistic, the CEA will discriminate against everyone. How? Well, it's simple: by implementing the NRC, the National Register for Citizens. And there have been multiple assertions surrounding the NRC which are affecting our opinion, and therefore I also welcome you to my first episode of Mythbusters. The first myth that surrounds us is that the NRC is not a part of the CEA and not related. We can give credit for this myth to a government-role document on Twitter saying that the NRC and the CEA are different processes and are not related. Well, firstly, this news report comes from ANI in communication with government sources and not from the government itself. The same document is unsigned, showing no credibility or authority. Secondly, it is also factually incorrect because the NRC stems from Section 14A of the Citizenship Act 1955, wherein the government has to make compulsorily a register of citizens. The Allied Citizenship, the Registration of Citizens, and issue of National Identity Card Rules 2003 also govern the NRC process. Yes, it was the same process used in Assam, as has been affirmed on its official webpage, that it was in fact these two pieces of legislation which were followed for making the Assam NRC. Therefore, the NRC is an inherent process of the CEA because it makes the process of getting registered citizenship for persons of these groups automatic as compared to all the other nationals of India who will still have to keep proving their citizenship. Secondly, people say that the NRC is just a register, an easy and economic activity, so what is the fuss about it? Well, first of all, the NRC takes into consideration a lot of different factors involving different costs. Secondly, there might be concerns about the list being wrongly made, leading to appeals, and the government might even come up and say that it is planning to do it all over again, as was done in Assam. Thirdly, let's say the NRC is made, but there still has to be establishment of detention centers for the purposes of detaining the recognized foreigners and deporting them back to their countries. In the crippling economic scenario of India, wherein the GDP is ever declining, there are lack of jobs, prices and poverty are rising, all this expenditure is expensive and burdensome. It is a comprehensive, expensive process which India's economy is not ready for, and no, it's not just a simple register. Thirdly, people believe that the NRC would not affect current citizens but only these migrants and Muslims. We first of all need to understand that at this point, the majority of the population, including myself, may not be citizens but nationals of this country. There's a difference between citizenship and nationality in reference to the Constitution. Citizenship stems only from the procedures provided in the Citizenship Act, and the Citizenship Act nowhere provides us with what is a conclusive proof of citizenship, leading to a lot of confusion and tussle. The Calcutta and Bombay High Courts have ruled that even passports, Aadhaar cards, PAN cards, etc. are not proofs of citizenship. The government has also specified in Section 9 of the Aadhaar Act that it is not a valid proof of citizenship. The NRC in itself is in fact a proof of citizenship. So even if we are so sure that we'll get citizenship, we might as well face the same fate people in Assam did, where military veterans, relatives of the ex-president, and brothers of the same family did not get citizenship despite having some documentation or the other. This is how cruel the NRC might get, and when the CEA gives a shortcut benefit to these migrants over the nationals of this country, it is bound to affect us, as the pool for registration of citizens would be common. There was an amendment to the Citizenship Act passed in 2003 which intended to prevent illegal migrants from getting Indian citizenship. Yes, it is the same amendment which is in news for Dr. Manmohan Singh and brought in the NRC. Illegal migrants are defined as foreigners without valid documents. There is a direct discrimination in reducing the rules of naturalization under the third schedule of the Act to 5 years for these migrants as compared to 11 years for all other people applying for the same process. These migrants also get a double benefit, as under the CEA they get two modes of acquiring citizenship, that is by naturalization and registration. Additionally, they get the benefit of abating any process of citizenship against them. This move gives them an undue advantage over all other nationals in India. So much so that nationals with documents might be declared as foreigners and be detained under Section 3 of the Foreigners Act, but these migrants escape the entire process without even having any documents. This amendment affects all of us, not just Muslim migrants. This might be misused in a way to sell citizenship or even force conversion just to avoid detention. Well, the constitutionality of the act must also be tested. Firstly, Muslims in their entirety are excluded from availing the benefit under the amendment. This denies them the equality before the law and equal protection of laws and is in violation of Article 14. Now, an intellectual watching Shri Harish Salve's interview may say this is a policy decision and hence not challengeable. However, an amendment is a law as it is passed by the Parliament under Article 13 of the Constitution. The state is expressly prohibited from making any laws in violation of fundamental rights. The case quoted by Shri Salve in his interview, FN Balsara vs. State of Bombay, laid down an exception to Article 14, which is the law being based on reasonable classification. However, there are two essentials to be fulfilled for a reasonable classification. Firstly, that it should be based on an intelligible differentia, which is present here as the migrants from minorities in a Muslim majority country are selected. Secondly, the same should have a rational nexus with the object sought to be achieved by the law. This remains unfulfilled because if there was an intention to protect persecuted minorities, then Ahmadiyas, Shias and most importantly Jews would have been included in the amendment. Therefore, the CAA is in violation of Article 14. Further, the CAA provides individuals access to citizenship even without documents. This discrimination is done on the basis of religion and to some extent the place of birth, which is an absolute prohibition under Article 15 of the Constitution. In context of the preamble of our Constitution, the CAA discriminates on the basis of religion, denying justice in terms of political rights to citizenship. It makes one question the liberty of exercising faith in their religious identity. It denies equality of opportunity, and lastly attacks the fraternity of the nation by dividing people as us and them, as has been seen from the recent protests. More evidently, it attacks the secular nature of the Indian Constitution by categorically dividing people on the basis of religion. Thus, the constitutionality of the amendment is extremely questionable in light of established jurisprudence and personal conscience. Now, there might be some other intellectuals who would argue that secularism is not an inherent part and it came through an amendment in 1976. Well, I guess it's time to go down the memory lane. On 11th August 1949, Dr. Punjab Rao Shamrao Deshmukh moved a similar amendment to the Constitution in the Constituent Assembly, where Hindus and Sikhs were to be given citizenship automatically on the basis of their religion. The same was supported by Dr. S.L. Saxena, asserting their homeland. However, the same was opposed by Dr. R.K. Sidhwa, who reminded the assembly of other communities, and later by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, on the basis of absurdity. The amendment moved by Dr. Deshmukh finally was rejected by the Constituent Assembly, making it clear that the Constitution was not to follow any principles which divided India on the basis of religion or gave a religious benefit, especially in objective matters like citizenship. The essence of secularism was explained in Dr. Krishnaswamy Iyengar's speech in that same debate. As a practice, where we cannot on religious or racial grounds make a distinction between one kind of persons. The CAA, in addition to being inflammatorily communal, has the following features. It discriminates between current nationals and Muslim migrants from specified countries. It is unnecessary in light of the situational analysis of the three countries and exclusion of minorities which also need protection. It violates our constitutional principles. Most importantly, the CAA creates a religious solution to a national problem which is objectively secular in nature. This leads to a conflict and diversion from real issues like the economy, Kashmir, etc., as is already evident from the current circumstances. This aggravates a reign of misinformation and ignorance. It strengthens government discretion, propaganda, and misuse due to provisions for grant of citizenship in absence of documentation. Lack of documentation is a common factor among rural areas and may induce such misuse and in some cases even forced conversions, as explained before. The government has clearly expressed what they want to do with the NRC and the CAA, yet we may choose to ignore it. Till date, more than 20 people have lost their lives to protest against this move. All of them belong to different religious affiliations. This amendment is not just against Muslims but also against our economy, our unity, our nationals residing for the past 20 years with or without documents for their ancestors' citizenship, and also against the conscience of being an Indian. We as nationals of this country might either want to ignore, embrace and appreciate these actions resulting in misery, discrimination and disharmony under the garb of nationalism, or we might want to raise our voices to protect the principles this nation nation's identity were built on. It's our choice which determines the future of India. I chose the latter because for me, blind support to the government and manipulating ideals of freedom, equality, brotherhood, and democracy is not nationalism but fascism. This probably explains the posts behind the comparison of India to the Nazi Third Reich. My faith in the ideals of my country's constitution shaped my religion, and I made this video to express and protect it. Jai Hind.